Good afternoon, Minister. Thank you for joining us again for our Ask the Minister session. We're catching up in what is a very busy week for the sector, with institutions opening their doors to all learners and the huge testing and logistical operation that entails. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you very much, Julia. And well, it was an easy invite to accept, because obviously it is a crucial week. Lots has been going on. Lots of people will have questions and things to feed in. So very timely. So that's lovely to see you.
So colleges and independent learning providers have been working flat out to get ready for this week. What do you want to say to them sort of 4 days in?
Well, you've done an amazing job. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. I'm starting to wonder if there's anything this sector can't achieve. It's so fantastic in terms of, it's a sort of pragmatic approach to these issues. As you say, obviously every the schools have gone back and colleges and the practical students have gone back to university. So all the sectors have had some element of that, but the scale of some of the colleges is what really makes it quite a big, as you say, logistical challenge. And I actually went to one of the colleges. I thought I'll be there just to sort of see what's going on and how they're dealing with it, and if we've got any issues, etc. Because it has been something that's been really rather just the sheer size and scale of it. But they have done an amazing job. So I went to Havant South Downs College. When I went in, they'd obviously used the sports facility like many have. And it was almost like going into the previous week. I've been into my local mass vaccination centre just to see how that was all been set up. It looked very similar. It was like a medical facility. They had really done an excellent job, and it was working like clockwork. So a massive thank you to everyone in the sector. All the hard work's paid off, and it's brilliant. And obviously, not just thank you from me. I mean, the students are unbelievably excited to be back, and they've missed every aspect of it. So I spoke to lots of students as well, so they were delighted, and they were really taking a lot of precautions themselves as well. They kind of they want to keep COVID out the college. They want to make sure they can keep going to the college. So they were absolutely brilliant. So we're really grateful to everybody, obviously the leaders, teachers, all the support staff, everything that everyone's done to get ready. And it looks like, based on the figures that we have, it looks like it's been an amazing success. So congratulations and thank you, well done to everybody.
How much of a focus has there really been in government around the specific challenges that colleges face here? You've mentioned scale, also practical students, much more so than schools, when government was deciding on a reopening date for learners for schools and colleges?
A lot, because we basically we've done a lot of work with the sector. We've had a lot of roundtables. They've brought up they've come at it with a specific lens of FE, and it does have some differences in terms of either scale or in terms of the type of courses, the practical courses, the fact you can be doing either on an apprenticeship or full-time. So there's many differences, and that's been right at the heart of our of all of the discussions that we've had. And actually we did manage to get where necessary, students and apprentices on practical courses who needed to be assessed or complete a license to practice, to get them to be able to attend college beforehand. And that was specifically because obviously we understood that some of the things that can be done very well online, but some of the things that really can't, and therefore we have to make exceptions. So I think that's very much informed our decision making, and right the way up to Chris Whitty and co, making the decisions about this. They were aware of this issue, and of course then permitted those students to be allowed to go back. So they have listened and tried to respond as well. So I think I think it's worked very well. We have been, the guidance has been very much tailored as much as possible, and we've given a lot of flexibility to colleges as well, because we know that their mix is also different. It's not not all colleges are the same. But there's lots of work with the sector. Thank you to all of those that have been involved in that, because they know their stuff, they know what they're solving for, and we obviously made sure that we prioritise their issues.
Now, there's been a little bit of confusion around what happens if a student has a positive LFT and then a subsequent negative test. Can you clear that up for us? Can a student with a positive followed by a negative test attend college?
So first of all, you've got the two settings for college. So you've got the 3 tests that they're all taking, which are being taken in this controlled environment. And effectively, I mean, I said it looked like a mass vaccination centre. They actually are under the same rules, as it were, as mass testing centres. So if you have a positive test in a mass testing centre, or, you know, in a college or a school as well, then you will be you will be sent home, so you will be isolating, and you know, if you've come into close contact with people as well, you will be sent home. That's just for the first 3, and the reason they're doing 3 tests as well is because obviously with the lateral flow test, the viral load, it could differ at different times, so that's kind of a belt and braces. So with those 3 tests, if someone's positive, you know, they're pretty accurate in terms of they feel they'll get that, and it's being done in a controlled environment. When people take the test home, the home testing kit rule is if you get a positive test, then what you have to do is get a PCR test. So you have to go and get a PCR test in a controlled environment. If that test then comes back as a negative test, then that is your result. So it overrides your previous lateral flow positive test. And the difference is because of the testing environments, the controlled testing environment versus, you know, doing it at home. So that's the rules. But it sounds a bit confusing now, but the reality is you'll be doing the first 3 tests over these 2 weeks, and then you'll be moving to the new system, which will be for all the home tests, you know, so will be everybody after that. If you get a positive test at home, then you go and get a PCR. If it's negative, you can go into college. If it's positive, clearly you have to isolate.
Mm-hmm. So with so many businesses still nowhere near considering having all staff back in offices and workshops, and the way of working generally having changed quite a lot, do you think institutions now need to make changes to their provision, particularly on, you know, practical things like T-levels? Do students need to learn different new skills to cope with what we now call the new normal?
Well, I think a lot of students have learned a lot of new skills through the pandemic to cope with the new normal to some degree. I mean, they've all been very flexible, been very resilient. They've gone online, you know, their learning experience has changed online. They've done assessments online, they've been videoed, you know, they're doing all kinds of things in their gardens and video. You know, they have been amazingly innovative, actually, the FE lecturers and obviously the students as well. So they have, I think, learned an awful lot. It's been tough. It's no doubt it's been tough for students. And, you know, talking to some of the young people back, you know, they hadn't seen anyone since Christmas. You know, they were, I mean, they were beyond excited, but they, you know, they'd really missed, you know, seeing people and their friends, and it has a massive impact on them. So obviously that's terrible, but they have also gained quite a lot of new skills. But in terms of the workplaces and adapting to the fact that, you know, obviously, I mean, you know, I think it's about 40% of businesses, people are working from home, and then, you know, the rest are actually in an environment. But the thing on T-levels is normally about the work placements on T-levels. So the flexibilities we've introduced there is, you know, they can be done next year. In fact, some of them are being done now, but most of them will be done next year. And we're also working with those first T-level providers to make sure that we, you know, we find any areas, if there's a particular issue, not being able to find a T-level placement, then we're working with our apprenticeship service here to help try to and also some public sector employees to try and help make sure that they happen. And the reason we're doing that is because pretty much everybody who chose to do a T-level chose because it was differentiated by the work experience, and pretty much every single one of them looks horrified if you talk to them about not doing that work experience. And it is the whole thing, you know, it is the whole experience. It's you know, it's seeing the environment, being in the environment, being able to meet a network, you know, there's a lot of elements to it. So we've, and of course there's a smallish number of students who are actually doing T-levels, and we built capacity for a lot more than that. I was actually delighted when I mentioned my vaccination centre. I went to my vaccination centre, it was developed by the Community Nurses Trust locally, And I met somebody there who talked to me all about apprenticeships and all the apprentices they were taking on to become community nurses, lots of different variants. And she said she was also in the process of writing to all the schools and colleges to say they would take the T-level placements because they were desperate to build the pipeline. And if you think about it, you know, how many more community nurses we're going to need over time as our social care models shifts to more people going home. And, you know, the more enlightened employers are seeing this as an absolute brilliant way of building a pipeline of talented employees who can then go on to apprenticeships or other ways into the organization. So that's what I want to see, and that's we have to get that if it's going to be the high quality experience and a game changer that we believe they should be.
Now, there was data out last week that showed an increase in the number of people that are NEET. Are you concerned about that at all, and what role do you think the FE sector can play here?
Well, of course, any sort of impact on increasing numbers of NEETs, you know, making sure that no young person's left behind. I mean, that concerns us all the time. Youth unemployment, that concerns us all the time. And we do work tirelessly across government. Actually, we released some figures which didn't show that. I think the ONS figures that you're probably referring to is the whole of the UK, whereas the figures that we released for England actually show that the proportion of people not in education, employment or training remains stable for the 16 to 24 group. It slightly increased in the 18 to 24 group and slightly decreased in the 16 and 17-year-olds, but overall remain pretty stable. But I guess in the wider UK context is probably where the ONS figures have picked that up. So that I don't know which country it is that's changing those figures, but that's the reality. However, it doesn't get away from the point that everything that we're doing is focused on avoiding that problem. And of course it can, you know, we've got a lot of uncertainty, and you know, and also the whole catch up and being out of college, all of those things, of course, increase the risk. So even though the figures are stable, I think the risk is increased. So, you know, that's why we're really focused on, you know, the incentives to plan for jobs, making sure we've got traineeships, which are a really brilliant tool to try and avoid young people ending up not in education, employment or training. And of course, we've also been, you know, launching other things, the skills toolkit, all of these things, Kickstart, all of these things are really focused on young people and trying to make sure there's a range of options for young people, depending on where they're trying to go, depending on where they're starting their journey. So, yeah, it doesn't change the actions. We're really, really focused on that and concerned about NEETs and youth unemployment.
Why has there been so little talk about lost learning and required support in further education? There's been a lot of talk about catch-up, particularly in schools. So are there any plans from government for more funding to support learners in FE institutions who obviously, like their peers in schools, have had really quite a difficult year?
Well, it doesn't feel to me like there's not a lot of talk about lost learning, because it's pretty much all I spend most of my day doing. And, you know, a lot of officials working with, well, we've had quite a number of sector roundtables as well to get that input. Of course, we've got Sir Kevin Collins, who we've spent a fair bit of time with, making sure that he really understands FE and you know, the sort of distinct nature of aspects of FE. It is a key government priority, this you know, catching up lost learning. There is very much an understanding of practical subjects, people who've lost the ability to practice and to use the equipment. There's very much an understanding of the cohort, the type of people that come to FE colleges. Sometimes they come before coronavirus with additional needs in terms of English and maths, for example. There's very much an understanding, and yes, there is. So obviously we had the £96 million tuition fund, and then that's for the following years, £102 million. And then Sir Kevin Collins is obviously looking at the longer term, you know, what happens after September, and you know, what other things we should be looking at, and that includes a whole range of things. I think the Secretary of State says nothing off the table, and in some ways, you know, also thinking about things like, you know, where do we get the extra time from, because clearly we have to get the extra time from somewhere, and that's in a way also probably potentially why it's not so much covered in the press, because that's less of an issue really in FE, because the students don't tend to be, you know, 9 to 5 days a week anyway. So there's a bit of time that can be used more inventive, you know, more that we can be more, well, make more use of, but it's within the working day. So I think that's probably why there's this focus, because a lot of the debate is around where the time comes from. So I think that's probably why, because it's less disruptive in FE. But we spend a lot of time focusing on it. It is a government priority, and we very much recognise the specificities of FE. And, you know, obviously we work to make sure the flexibility is there, because, you know, obviously colleges know their students best.
Thank you very much. And thank you for once again answering all those questions this afternoon. Let's do this again soon. And thank you for your time, Minister.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure, Julia.